Hello and welcome to Watch This Space. I'm Brian Carney with Rivada Networks, and joining me on this episode is David Burr of Rivada Space Networks. David is Vice President of Product Management at Rivada Space Networks, which is building the Outernet. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
Uh, so, um, since you're in charge of product management, I thought we should talk about the product that Rivada Space Networks is building, which we call the Outernet. Can you just explain to our viewers and listeners what is the Outernet? How is it different from the products that other LEO constellations are building and deploying, and why that matters?
Yeah, it's a great question. And certainly LEO constellations are in the news with SpaceX's IPO last week. And, no question, Starlink and the other LEOs have revolutionized satellite internet. But when we're talking to customers, there are customers out there who aren't satisfied with internet. They're looking for something more secure, used to private networks. And those are the customers that we're going after. So we're building the LEO constellation for private networks, able to go rooftop to rooftop anywhere in the world.
So I think you raised an interesting point there, and maybe it's one that not everybody has thought about. When you say not everybody wants internet, I imagine, I know I did before Rivada got involved with this project, that I kind of assumed that if you had a satellite dish, what it connected to on the back was, it was kind of all the same thing, right? Which I know is a naive way of putting it, but I'm neither an engineer nor a satellite guy. I'm just a communications guy. And so when you say it's not the internet, I think a lot of people might kind of get taken aback by that, and maybe we can dig into that a little bit. So um, I don't tell Declan. I have a Starlink dish out here in my backyard. I use it for backup communications because I live in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes a tree falls and takes out my internet for a week, and I need to be able to work. So I have it on basically a standby mode. But so that dish, which is connected to my router, right? It goes up, and then it comes down to a gateway, and we can talk about what that is maybe, and then it connects to the internet. But what you're saying is the outer net isn't like that. It doesn't go up to a satellite, down to a gateway, and then through, the terrestrial internet backbone that most of us just kind of take for granted. So can you explain what you mean when you say it's not internet?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And, what you described is pretty much what everyone has at home, right? They've got an internet connection at home. Um, but we're not targeting consumers. We're B2B, right? We're targeting enterprises and government organizations. And when you look at enterprises and government organizations in the terrestrial networks, a lot of them are taking carrier Ethernet to connect their offices around, or in the financial community, they like MPLS, which is the same thing. It's not internet. It's a private network that connects their buildings, offices in different countries or regions together, and it stays off of the internet. And they're doing that for security. They're doing that for resiliency. They may also have internet, especially as a backup. That would be a common thing. But they're, telcos, pretty much every telco in the world has a private networking, usually carrier Ethernet or MPLS offer that they provide to businesses. So I mean, there is a pretty big market out there, but as individual consumers, you might not see that. It's a business to business type market, and like I say, that's exactly where we're going. We're not targeting consumers and internet access. The existing players have that pretty well sorted. But a lot of the companies who've been taking private networks feel a little left behind in with the current Leo offering. They like the performance that's out there from Leos, but they're not willing to give up the private networks that they've enjoyed for a while, and that's who we're targeting.
Right. So from a product perspective, maybe we can talk a little bit about what some of those differences are. So if you are buying internet access, and this is true for, my home fiber to the home, or, if I used to use the cable company, it's true for that dish in my backyard, right? It's a best effort product. So I may pay for, 1 gig or whatever it is, 500 megabits per second, but they're not promising me that actual performance. It's always up to that, right? Up to is usually in tiny little letters next to whatever the speed is. So there's not guaranteed performance on that internet connectivity. It's what they call best effort. It's often not symmetrical, although, depending on the product, some are more likely to be symmetrical than others, but you might have much faster download speeds than upload speeds, right? In terms of what I'm getting for what I'm paying for, um, that internet connectivity, right? Sort of home broadband, or even if it's a business broadband, is a different product, right? I'm asking you product questions because you're the product guy, but and so how does that compare with, again, with the kind of offerings that Rivada is rolling out for the Outernet?
Yeah, and so the main difference between what an enterprise would want compared to what consumers get is one, they're looking for predictable performance in the network. This is mission critical business traffic that's going through that, and they want, to make sure that they understand how the network is going to behave with that. And the second is because, you're an organization with, say, 50 offices around the globe, you need an interface into that network where you can manage it, where you can add new sites, where you can monitor the sites that are there, you can move bandwidth around, and make sure that the network is taking traffic where you want. And our strategy for providing that is we've adopted the carrier Ethernet standards, that have been developed by Amplify, or the Metro Ethernet Forum. And this is kind of the gold standard for private networks that, Fortune 500 companies and others are used to. And that gives them the management and the performance predictability that they can integrate into their networks in the same way that they're using their terrestrial network. So it's an easy way, and it gives them the comfort that they know what they're going to get with a network that's certified to those standards.
Okay, so they are not simply buying a best effort product, is what I hear you saying, but they're getting um, if they sign up for, a certain level of throughput, that we are committing to them to provide that level of throughput at, some level of reliability that's determined in a contract or something. So if they wake up and they're getting a third of that one morning, we don't just say, well, we tried, right? We did our best.
And especially, quality of service is a big part of those standards. An enterprise needs to know that their high priority traffic is being treated at a higher priority than the best effort traffic. And all of those are in there, and the MEF standards identify exactly how the network should behave in terms of prioritizing the different traffic and how customers are tagging that traffic, so we know what's high priority and not. And that kind of thing is missing in internet traffic like you and I have at home.
Got it. So we've talked a little bit about performance. You mentioned security. Security is also a big deal, for a number of these customers, and some of that, as I understand it, is becoming more important as quantum computing progresses in capabilities, and the dangers that quantum computing poses to traditional encryption methodologies and the security of data. Um, the risks of having your data kind of travel over the public internet if it's highly sensitive data are only increasing. Is that right?
No, absolutely. And, there have been some pretty high profile examples, the Sony hack a few years ago that's cost them, hundreds of millions of dollars in reputational and business damage. If you're an enterprise CIO, security is kind of your top priority in securing your network. And that's the main factor driving customers towards private networks. Most hackers enter through the internet. And so the best way to keep yourself secure is to stay off of the internet, to have a private network. Something that Cisco, we just wrote a paper, and they describe it as an air gap network, right? You have two separate networks, and you've got a literal gap between those, so no traffic can flow between them. And that's really the most secure way to design a network. So an important part of what we're doing in providing the Outernet is we take traffic directly from a customer's rooftop to a customer's rooftop, and we bypass all those points along the way that could be hacked and an entry point for getting into the network.
So how does Rivada do that, David?
So that's a great point. So we have a constellation of satellites in LEO orbit, 288 of them, and they're connected by laser links. So the whole thing is a mesh orbiting in space. And so what we do is there's a user terminal on the customer's rooftop that communicates with the first satellite that it sees. And then that traffic is routed through our constellation to the satellite closest to the endpoint. And then we go down to the customer's location there. So the whole thing transits through only our network. It's 100% based in space. It doesn't pass through teleports or gateways or POPs or any of that. So it's secure in that the only places it passes through are our satellites, which would be difficult to there aren't spaceships going up and hacking satellites. That's not where we are in the world. So we can keep things secure in there.
Can any other LEO do what you just described?
Well, the problem is most of these constellations are designed for high volume internet. They're designed for scale. But our network is designed for flexibility. We need to connect customers where they are, not where we would like them. And it's really hard to build a network that can do scale and flexibility. You have to choose one and do that well. And so we see networks, the other networks that are optimized for internet and high volume traffic are optimized for scale. They can, but it's not optimized for it, not ideal. But that's our bread and butter, is the flexibility that each customer has their own network that runs through our constellation.
Got it. So aside from these sort of basic architectural features, I don't mean basic, but sort of fundamental architectural features that you described, the sort of the air gap network, what else is Rivada and the Outernet doing to ensure the security of our customers' traffic?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's certainly not the only thing. So each customer in our network is separated with their own virtual routing function, or VRF, so that keeps customers separate. If one customer is hacked, it can't leak into another customer's network because they're running in separate routing functions. We're also providing end-to-end encryption of customer traffic with AES 256. And then, you have the organization of Rivada, beyond the network. And our company is going through IA certification, which is the US government's, highest degree of certification for commercial providers like this. Whereas a lot of companies have a single division or subsidiary that's focused on government business that's certified. We're doing the whole company of Rivada is going under IA so that every customer, whether they're an enterprise or a telco, is going to enjoy the same level of security that our US government customers enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've had Kelly Hayes on the show, and we've talked through that, and um, Kelly certainly seems to know what she's doing. So, and one of the things that I think Kelly said to me was, building a secure network without having a secure organization is, leaving the back door open while triple bolting the front. She didn't put it that way, but we need to be as secure as the network we're trying to build, and that certainly was something she emphasized to us already, and clearly it's important. Um, Aside from security, what are the other benefits of the way that we are building the Outernet for our customers?
So the other thing that customers benefit from when you bypass terrestrial networks is resilience, right? When the network is carrying all your mission critical business functions, you need to make sure that it stays up. And a lot of companies are deploying, especially SD-WAN now, as a resilient way to build networks. And that works best when you're combining networks that are completely separate. It doesn't do you any good if there are common points of failure in a network in two networks. And so building a network that's 100% in space means we're completely diverse from a customer's terrestrial network. And we just wrote a paper with Cisco, actually the second paper with Cisco, about how the Outernet is an ideal fit for their SD-WAN customers because it gives them that complete diversity. So resilience in terms of network uptime is a big one. Latency, important for certain verticals, right? And applications, high frequency trading is all about, low latency. And so what they're interested in is each one of those terrestrial points adds some latency to the network. So if they can bypass them, it reduces the end-to-end latency. And because of the way our network is and we bypass those points, we can actually be faster than terrestrial networks. And that's really important for certain verticals like that. Kind of the fourth benefit there is sovereignty. And data sovereignty is kind of a buzzword in the industry. Do you know where your data is and is it safe? But it's hard to secure your data if you don't know where it goes. So that's kind of foundational, is to making sure you know where it goes. And customers of the Outernet, it stays within our satellite network. It goes from their rooftop through our satellites back down. It's clear who's in control and who can't control that. And so customers like embassy networks are really concerned with that because they have to ensure, government policy and security of the country depends on, those networks in some cases. So sovereignty is an important part of their decision making. So it's kind of, security, resilience, low latency, and sovereignty are the main benefits you get by bypassing terrestrial networks.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Again, I think a lot of people sort of think everything is the internet, right? And the internet is great, and it's great for a whole lot of things. And we are using it right now. You and I, we're talking over it, and our company relies on it for virtual meetings and everything else. But um, the internet sort of isn't the whole of the communications space, and it's space. Sorry, no pun intended. And I think it's valuable for our viewers to understand where we fit within that larger communications space and why we're different. I really appreciate that overview, David, and I think it's been really informative. Is there anything that you left out or anything that you'd like to add at this point? Otherwise, I think we'll just wrap it there because that was a pretty good summary.
So no question that the internet is huge. And everyone has the internet, but it's that scale that it's a Achilles heel, right? It becomes a one size fits all. And what we see is customers are not all the same. And for those customers that security and resilience are top of their mind, that's who we are targeting, and we have a solution for them.
All right. Well, thank you, David, for explaining all of that, and thanks for coming on the show. I hope we can get you on again to delve even deeper into these product questions and help our viewers understand. But I appreciate your time, and this has been Brian Carney with Watch This Space, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. Thank you.